December 21, 2009. Domino's Pizza ran a television commercial in which its own CEO looked directly into the camera and said the company's pizza tasted like cardboard. Not a competitor. Not a critic. The CEO himself. The stock was trading around $12 a share. The brand was bleeding. And the question nobody could answer that morning was simple: had Patrick Doyle just committed the most expensive act of corporate suicide in fast food history, or had he done something no executive in America had ever been brave enough to do? Domino's Pizza was founded in 1960 by Tom Monahan and his brother James in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Tom bought out James for a used Volkswagen Beetle within the first year. He kept the name from the pizzeria he'd bought, Dominic's, and changed it just enough to avoid a lawsuit. By 1967, the franchise system had begun. By 1978, Domino's had 500 locations. The model was never about great pizza. It was about speed. 30 minutes or it's free. That guarantee made the company a logistics operation disguised as a restaurant. By 1989, Domino's had 5,000 stores worldwide. But the guarantee died in 1993, after a jury awarded $78 million to a woman whose car was struck by a Domino's driver racing the clock. Speed had a cost. And without the gimmick, the product had to stand alone. It couldn't. Through the 90s, customer satisfaction scores began a slow, quiet erosion. The pizza won no awards. It inspired no loyalty. It simply existed, predictable, cheap, and forgettable. Tom Monahan sold the company to Bain Capital in 1998 for approximately $1 billion. New owners, same recipe. The brand went public in 2004. The stock never really flew. By 2009, the American Customer Satisfaction Index ranked Domino's dead last among national pizza chains. Dead last. Behind everyone. A company that had once redefined convenience had become the pizza people ordered when they had given up on dinner. And then came the decision that changed everything. The internal research had been accumulating for months before Patrick Doyle became CEO in March 2009. The surveys were brutal. Focus groups were worse. Customers used words like bland, processed, and totally void of flavor. One participant said the sauce tasted like ketchup. Another said the crust was cardboard. These weren't fringe opinions. They were consistent. Overwhelming. The kind of feedback that normally gets buried in a PowerPoint deck and presented to a board that nods and changes the subject. But Russell Weiner, Domino's chief marketing officer at the time, had been building something different. His team had been filming those focus groups. They had the tape. Real people, real faces, real contempt. Weiner and Doyle sat with that footage and made a calculation that ran against every instinct in corporate America. They would put it on television. The new campaign, developed with agency CP+B, Crispin Porter and Bogoski, was called The Pizza Turnaround. The concept was radical in its simplicity. Domino's would admit, publicly, on national television, in its own advertisements, that its pizza was not good. That the criticism was fair. That the company had failed its customers. And then it would show Americans the new recipe. The campaign launched on December 27, 2009, with a full 2-minute documentary-style ad that aired on national cable. Doyle appeared on camera, calm, direct, slightly uncomfortable in the way honest people are when they say hard things. He said, quote, "There comes a time when you know you have to make a change." The ad included actual footage of focus group participants mocking the product. A chef reading the feedback aloud, visibly stung. The tagline was, "Oh yes we did." They were announcing a complete reformulation of their core product: new sauce, new cheese blend, new crust with garlic and butter infused into the dough, after nearly 50 years of the same recipe. The risk was staggering. The admission handed every competitor a weapon. It handed every food critic a headline. It told every franchisee, every investor, every customer who had eaten Domino's last Tuesday, that what they had been selling and buying for decades was, by the company's own admission, inferior. Doyle went on NBC's Today show. He went on financial news programs. He did not deflect. In an era when corporations hired crisis PR firms specifically to avoid saying exactly what Doyle was saying, he was saying it out loud, on camera, with his name attached. The quarter following the campaign launch, same-store sales in the United States rose 6%. That number matters. In an industry where a 2% uptick generates internal celebrations, 6% was seismic. By the end of 2010, Domino's reported a 33% increase in annual profit. The stock, sitting at roughly $12 when the campaign broke, began a climb that would eventually take it past $400 a share by 2021, making it one of the most dramatic long-term stock performances of any restaurant company in American history. Investors who held through the self-flagellation got rich. Franchisees who feared the campaign would torch the brand instead watched their locations fill back up. The recipe change received genuine positive reviews from food journalists who had spent careers dismissing fast food pizza without a second thought. But not everyone won. The pizza supply chain required retooling. Some ingredient suppliers who had relationships built on the old formulation lost contracts. The broader quick-service restaurant category watched the campaign with something between admiration and alarm. If Domino's could survive admitting failure this publicly, it meant the old playbook, deny, deflect, reframe, was no longer the only option. Perhaps the more unexpected consequence was what the campaign did to the internal culture of the company. Employees who had spent years selling a product they privately knew was mediocre now had something different. They had a story. They had been part of a correction. The campaign won industry awards. CP+B was celebrated. And Doyle, who had taken the CEO role just 9 months before the campaign launched, became one of the most studied executives in business school case studies across the country. He was not a villain who got away with something. He was not a whistleblower who sacrificed himself. He was a CEO who looked at an honest problem and told the truth about it before the market forced him to. That almost never happens. The cost of honesty, it turned out, was about 30 seconds of discomfort on the Today Show. What Domino's did in December 2009 was not complicated. It was just rare. Companies accumulate bad products the way people accumulate bad habits, gradually, with rationalizations that make each compromise feel reasonable at the time. The crust was always a little thin. The sauce was always a little sweet. Nobody quit en masse. Nobody rioted. The sales were fine. The system worked. And then one day the American Customer Satisfaction Index tells you that you have the worst pizza in America, and you have 2 choices. You can manage the narrative, or you can fix the pizza. Most companies manage the narrative. They hire consultants to reframe the data. They introduce a premium line to absorb the criticism and protect the core product. They run campaigns about heritage, about community, about values, anything except the fact that the thing they sell is not good enough. Doyle chose differently, and the reason matters as much as the decision. He chose differently because the data left no room for comfortable denial. The focus group footage was not ambiguous. The customers were not confused. The sandwich had no defense. In that sense, the Domino's story is less about corporate courage and more about what happens when a company stops giving itself permission to be mediocre. The lesson is not, admit your failures and you will succeed. Some companies have admitted failures and collapsed anyway. The lesson is narrower and harder. It is that the truth about your product is always already known, by your customers, by your employees, by your lowest paid delivery driver who hears the feedback at the door every single night. The question is never whether the truth exists. The question is only who says it first. If the customer says it first, it becomes a scandal. If a journalist says it first, it becomes a crisis. If a regulator says it first, it becomes a liability. But if the CEO says it first, on national television, in his own ad, with his own face, It becomes a turnaround story. Domino's did not succeed because it was brave. It succeeded because it was honest about something everyone already knew. The most dangerous thing a company can do is keep a secret the whole world is already keeping for it.